Lamborghini lurking. Ain't no mercy, ain't no mercy. That purple Lamborghini lurking. Rose. Don't be begging for your life, cause that's a lost cause. High stakes, body armor, suicide, bullet. It's the time for games and it's the time to kill. Make up your mind, baby, cause the time is here. Capital murder, capital letters. Yeah, she catching my vibe, but she can't fathom my chest. Need a couple gang members for these new endeavors. From this point on, anything we do together.
Oh, yeah, it's the Matt Kwasiborski Show calling you live and direct from a fall night here in Arlington, Virginia, just across the bridge in the river from Washington, D.C. In fact, we can see the monuments from here. It's a beautiful night. Fall is setting in, and we're welcoming back Mr. John Mathers. What's going on, John?
Matt, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me once again.
I appreciate you coming on. And, you know, as being a loyal co-host of the show, my most popular guest and my most frequent guest, I really do appreciate your time. And we're here to talk about the NFL, the Eagles. There was a big NBA trade, by the way, as I was setting up the podcast. We might delve into that a little bit. But I just want to say, first off, we want to thank Al Gore for inventing the internet. We want to thank Spreaker platform. We want to thank Skype for here and all the loyal listeners out there. The other night we were watching the Eagles beat up on the Tampa Bay Bucks 25-11, and you and I were in a text or an SMS chain with our good buddy Philip from Czech Republic.
Shout out to Philip.
Shout out to Philip, whose house is pretty much almost finished, and the Uncle Matt suite is almost ready for me to move in next year. You said this team is suspect, meaning the Eagles. What did you mean by that? Why the term suspect after only 3 weeks?
Well, I mean, I think, again, like you said, it is 3 weeks, but we're not going to get our best football. But there are some things that concern me, even in going into week 4 this week against the Commanders. We can sort of delve into them now, but you're the host.
I mean, number one concern when you say it's suspect, what are you looking at?
I think Jalen Hurts right now looks like 2021 Jalen Hurts. Started off the season, first game, a little shaky, obviously. Didn't get a lot of preseason game action. As we know, the Eagles really like to put a lot of stock into those organized team activities with other teams coming to Philly and so on and so forth. So it didn't get a lot of work. First game, again, I think offensive coordinators just getting his feet wet a little bit. Yeah. Again, I think first game sort of jitters, getting the rust off. But then Vikings game, 1 interception, and then last game this week, 2 interceptions. Not really great. Yes, a win's a win. But again, I'm fast forwarding towards games in the schedule that are under my notes here of concerns, and not sure if you're going to play like this against the Dolphins or the Chiefs or the Bills or even the Niners at that point. So a little concerned about that. Less concerned about Jalen because I think that he will come around. I don't think he's going to have a down year, but we're coming off a year where he was really good.
Yeah.
So everything like that looks a little bad now. So.
Yeah, I mean, he does look a little bit hesitant. I have some theories about that. The first, you brought up the point that we had a virgin offensive coordinator calling the shots. Not an inexperienced one, a virgin, right? Going in to New England, in rainy New England, playing the Patriots and all-world coach Bill Belichick, probably the greatest coach of all time, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You kind of thought that they were going to struggle. I mean, that was Bill Belichick's licking his chops. The second week against the Vikings, even though we scored 34 points, we're going against Brian Flores, a Belichick disciple. So he was going to use the same exact game plan. And then the third week, Todd Bowles, one of the better defensive minds, again, in the whole NFL. And we all remember the last time that Jalen went into Tampa, Bowles exposed him when he was then the defensive coordinator in the playoffs. Didn't do as well as exposing him there, but I do think that factors into it, the inexperience of the offensive coordinator. He's no longer a virgin, and he sort of adapted in the Vikings and the Bucks game to starting running the ball crazily well. What I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed the same, John, is that the defenses are trying to take away the edge whether it's Jalen running to the edge or even Goddard. You remember Goddard? He used to get those plays last year, those extended plays when he would catch the ball, almost like a tight end screen or a tight end bubble on the edge. And the first two teams took him out in Tampa Bay. He started showing signs of breaking through. So I think the read on the Eagles' offense take away the edge.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point because, early on, I think of the Patriots game, he didn't have a lot of targets, and I'm not so much sure at the Vikings. I don't remember if he had a lot of targets either, but I know last game against the Bucs, he was targeted pretty much only because he's on my fantasy team. Right. I know the first 2 weeks weren't great. So, yeah, I mean, our defenses, do we have enough tape now that people are going to go after us in certain ways? Absolutely. Right. Does the offensive coordinator being new have something to do with it? Absolutely. Is the fact that it's the fourth week of the season? Absolutely. I wouldn't say I'm at the point of concern where I'm not the Vikings right now. You know what I mean? Which I'm sure we'll talk about later, or sort of what's going on with the injuries in Cincinnati. Yeah. So on that aspect, like I'm not concerned about some things. But from an offensive perspective going into the season, the offense was my least of my concerns. Okay. But I was also used to scoring, 30, 40 points a game like last year. Right. Now my biggest concern going into this season, and we've discussed this, I think, on other podcasts, even during the draft, was our secondary linebacker core. The plays in the middle, we're giving up large clips to wide receivers, which, we shouldn't be doing. If we got two really good so-called slot corners that are, I don't want to say superstar or they're Pro Bowl players, absolutely. But, between the holes at safety, which again, I think there's going to be growing pains there. We're young there. We're kind of filling some holes. But on the outside, with Bradbury getting injured last week or 2 weeks ago, coming and playing the slot this week, you had Josh Jobe out there who was, I don't want to say he was okay. I mean, serviceable, but I mean, like, you remember the Vikings game, that Jordan Addison touchdown, like missed tackle there, saves a touchdown. So, I mean, again, it's week 4. I don't want to raise the alarms, but there are things on this team that concern me that hoping that we can kind of clean them up moving forward.
Yeah. I would stay a little bit on Jalen, too. When he looks to run the ball, it's like the defense is like, do not let him beat you running the ball because that opens up the passing game. Make him stay there and pass. And I thought in Tampa Bay, given the circumstances of the weather that affected both quarterbacks, Jalen made some really nice throws. The one, going back to what Bowles did to him in the playoff game, rolled Jalen out to his left and he cannot throw. He improved upon that last year. And that one pass where he sort of rolled to the left and found Zacchaeus, another St. Joe's prep guy, wide open.
Zacchaeus.
Yeah. And then he hits him for that touchdown. That touchdown throw to him was a thing of beauty. He knew he was going to get hit, nice. Dropped it in there like a pillow. And then on the other side of the ball, you have former number 1 overall draft pick Baker Mayfield on his third team. He was struggling throwing the wet ball. His receivers didn't help him a little bit. Mike Evans surprisingly dropped a few, but he was overthrowing guys. So I think there is a better game plan on the throwing the ball for Jalen Hurts. And he did have 2 interceptions. The one was a miscommunication with a brand new player, Swift. That's going to happen. And the interception he threw down at the goal line did turn into 2 points, maybe not 6, but it did turn into 2 with the safety down there. Yeah,
and that was a hell of a play by that DB. By the way, I thought the safety. Yeah. He came over. Like, I don't even know if Jalen saw him. To be honest with you, The amount of time it took him to come across the field like that was kind of remarkable. But the one thing about Jalen's deep ball, if I remember correctly, the Vikings game, I think it was the Vikings game, the first throw that he threw to Devontae for a touchdown, it was like, I think he had to come back. He might have to come back for the second one. And it was the same issue I had with Carson Wentz when he was here. You got to lead your receiver. Go throw a ball farther than he can get it, and let him run his ass and go get it. Yeah. Because that's the best way you can set up your receivers. Now, when you have a guy like Devontae Smith, or we even talk about Mike Evans, a guy that can go up and get the ball, or A.J. Brown, is a great receiver to have. But sometimes I find that he drops back and throws kind of a duck, and it ends up where, Devontae Smith has to make a play. I wish, more times out, more times than none that he would kind of like lead his receiver a little bit more. But listen, we're nitpicking on a runner-up MVP from last season at week 4. So
right.
I'm not burning the jerseys yet or burning the boats or whatever.
No.
I'm still optimistic, but there are concerns. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. He does. Like I said, he does look hesitant throwing the ball a little bit because I don't think he's used to seeing what he's seeing, especially if he doesn't get out on the edge. But my concern with the offense, Jalen's going to get it together. He learned from his first year, became a runner-up MVP. He's not going to be flaming out in 2 years because he can't adjust. That's not his mentality. But the depth at the receiver position does concern me. You have A.J. Brown, 1A, Devontae Smith, 1B, and they alternate each week. Sometimes Smith is 1A. That's a great problem to have. And A.J. Brown had a hell of a game against the Bucs. I think 127 in the air. If one of those two guys gets hurt, what in the hell is going to happen to that passing offense? Because
don't put that into the universe, Matt. Thanks.
Well, that's the thing. Their skill positions are Brown in the passing game are Brown, Smith, and Goddard, and teams are finding ways to take Goddard out of the equation. I think they found ways to get him back in there thanks to the running game. They do have Rashad Penny back there. They haven't used him at running back much because Swift has been amazing. But they're also not utilizing the running backs very well in the passing game. And that's what I think would have to change. But Zacchaeus, he could become the next best third receiver. When Quez gets back, I'm not down on Quez like everyone else is. He's made some mistakes last year. But he's got something that the team keeps him around because teams wouldn't keep him. The Eagles would not keep him around. We're missing like the Jason Avant, right? Jason Avant was the guy under Andy Reid. He was that third receiver, that they needed to make a key catch every once in a while that you could count on him to do that. And I forget who it was for Carson. I guess more like Ertz would have been that guy.
Jordan Matthews.
Jordan Matthews. Yeah, exactly. Well, you had Alshon, not Tony, the fast receiver. Torrey Smith, thank you. And then you had Jordan Matthews. We need that third guy to step up somewhere, whether it's Watkins or Zacchaeus, to really make an impact. Because otherwise, one of those guys goes down, Brown or Smith, and the passing game, the offense is going to look a whole lot different. That's my big concern after looking at the first 3 games. In rainy New England, in rainy Tampa Bay, a short week on Monday night or a Thursday night against the Vikings. But that's my concern.
Were you concerned about it going into the Bucs game, and then after the Bucs game, did you feel better after watching Olamide?
You didn't feel any better. I felt better, but is he going to become a guy that can do that every week? Because he has the skills to do it. Everyone has the skills. We thought about that like Zach Pascal, but he left. If the Eagles wanted him to stay around, they would have re-signed him, the so-called Sirianni guy. Zacchaeus could become a better version of that. And why I bring up Jason Avant is because Jason Avant, was worth it, and the Eagles made it a point to keep him around.
Right. It's tough when listen. This is not a bad problem to have 2 almost number 1 receivers.
No.
But yeah, like injuries happen all the time. What do? You go out and you make a trade for a guy if it's a really bad injury, knock on wood. Yeah. If it's a week-to-week thing, you hope that exactly what you're saying, Olamide Zacchaeus and Quez and whoever else we have on the practice squad can step up. If that's not the case, then Howie Roseman goes to work and signs a guy off the scrap heap, and here we are. But I'm not concerned about that depth-wise. Like, we have the luxury of having 2 number 1s.
Yeah.
If one goes down, you're gonna have a hard time filling those shoes, but you still got a number 1 guy on the outside. You know what I'm saying? So I'm less concerned about that. Then you can lean on Goddard a little bit more too. So listen, the offensively, the only concern coming into the season was running back, and after the last 2 games, I feel good about the sort of rolling of the dice when it comes to or who's got the hot hand. Right. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
So that I'm like pretty down with. Like to see Rashad Penny get some touches, but obviously they're seeing what they're seeing in him too. So offensively, I'm not concerned, and I wouldn't be so concerned about the wide receivers. You questioned Devontae Smith at the draft, and I kind of agree with you. His size But I'll tell you what, we're watching the games. He takes some hit, man, and he gets right back up. He is tough as nails, that kid.
Yep.
And he's, 100 and some pounds, like soaking wet. So good for him, keeping his body right. And AJ Brown looks like Rambo out there.
Yeah.
So
And funny part about I did say that about Devonta, and I still get concerned about that. But he kind of it's the concern is less and less. Obviously, every time he takes that hit and he pops right back up. Speaking of AJ Brown, did you see his cleats? He looked like he was a human highlighter out there with those little cleats. Everyone was saying he was kind of joking that Jalen Hurts would see him, kind of thing. It was kind of a funny joke. It's funny to joke like that when you win, right?
Especially after what happened and all the media attention around the Vikings game when he was kind of like they thought he was like yelling at or having a fight on the sideline. It was kind of it is what it is kind of thing, but whatever.
You want to see that. You don't want to see. You want to see people engaged on the sidelines. And one thing about Hurts, he's not a guy who engages on the sideline, but doesn't have to. But he doesn't hide himself. Like I always felt like Carson, like he didn't want to talk to anybody on the sideline, especially his receivers. And you want to see guys like AJ Brown. He's an emotional guy. We know that coming into it. I took nothing from that as like a controversy. It's just the media needing a talking point there. Before we switch to the defense, even though you bring it up, I want to stay on the offense.
Yeah.
What's the love with Gainwell? I like him, but I just can't get to like him being a primary target in this offense, unless he's a better blocker as a runner than Swift. Because Swift, I know he's not the best blocker. I just don't get the Gainwell love.
I think they like Gainwell because he can catch out of the backfield. I think it gives them.
But Swift is supposed to be a guy who catches as well.
I agree with you, but recently he's been the bell cow. Okay. So you don't have to catch out of the backfield if you got A, B, and C, D gaps open. You know what I mean? Yeah. Running behind all pros and hopefully future Hall of Famers. So they make his job a lot easier. And listen, he does some great work too. He's fast. He's swift. So I mean, so far so good. His concern would be obviously health. We've talked about that as well. You traded for a guy who's been banged up, but again, knock on wood, he stays healthy. But if again, going back to what you talked about with the wide receivers, if he went down, you have Gainwell, you have Boston Scott, you got Penny. So the depth there on the offense doesn't really concern me.
Yeah, I'm fine with the running back depth if Gainwell went down, once Scott gets over the concussion and Penny can come in and fill those roles, or if Swift goes down. But Gainwell, to me, just as he's a good running back out of the backfield to catch the ball. Running the ball, I don't like it. I don't like him running the ball. I don't think he does that much. He did have a nice run, but you and I could have ran through those blocks the other night. That was just amazing. And let's stay on the offensive side of the ball, because Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been the number one run defense in the league, and I think they were number one coming in. Teams could not run on them. And all of this, how do the Eagles just not only have the better game plan, but just absolutely mauled that Tampa Bay defensive line, and just Swift was running up the middle and just took their heart out. What do you attribute to that, and how could it be so lopsided?
Jeff Stoutland. That's probably who I would point to. Having Jeff Stoutland, having him mold a left tackle who was an 8th round rugby player is pretty impressive. Jason Kelce is who Jason Kelce is. Drafting Landon Dickerson and being able to have him be as good a player as him. Cam Jurgens, I think. So Cam Jurgens was one of the people I was gonna talk about how not concerned about. He getting a guy being drafted to be basically the heir apparent of Jason Kelce, having him play another position and excelling at it is very impressive. And then, of course, Lane Johnson's Lane Johnson. Got to watch that kick out though, and it's getting a little close there. But no, to answer your question, Matt, behind that offensive line, like you said, you and I could run through it. Vita Veo, I know was a little banged up coming into the game. He ended up playing. I thought he was going to be a scratch, but they said he wasn't. He's a big boy too. He's like double Javon Hargrave.
Yeah.
But other than that, their defensive line isn't. I don't know. It's not that great. The people that I could think, Shaq Barrett, right? He's going through some personal stuff, so he wasn't obviously. I don't know if his head was completely in it, but yeah. Again, Jeff Stout. Hats off to Jeff Stoutland, Howie, of course. Got to get a Howie plug in there, and the guys, the talent. Like, listen, I wasn't too keen on having Jason Kelsey come back here because it's the last song and dance, but it doesn't seem like he's lost a step.
No,
so
that's the crazy part.
With him and Brandon and Fletcher, like, okay, if you guys can keep doing it, keep doing it. We'll keep paying you the money you want as long as you keep producing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that, Tampa Bay doesn't have a lot of name recognition, Vita Vea and the other defensive, but the system was it's also more of an attack on the system, right? It's the Todd Bowles system that gets them that number one. They have great linebackers, too, by the way.
I was just going to say Levante David and
Devin White out
Devin
LSU.
White,
and then, but to be that much more dominant, like, that, it's just super impressive, the lanes that Swift could see and Penny. Philip sent us that text where he took the screenshot of it, and it was like, my God, it was like the part, and he put Moses, no offense to Moses, but it was like parting of the sea. We put the little Simpsons or some sort of movie pick in there about the parting of the Red Sea, and that's exactly what it was. It's an amazing job, and then give Johnson credit. Whoever came over to him and said, "Hey, dude, you got to start running the ball," or he said, "You know what, passing game's not there in against Minnesota right now. Let's go to the run," and you set up the pass through the run where I think going back to where Jalen, teams are making sure so far that Jalen can't hurt him with his legs, make him throw the ball, has caused Jalen to be a little bit hesitant because even when he rolls out, it seems like guys are, that so-called spy is like right on him as soon as he rolls out to the right or to the left. And that'll be adjustment, and those guys will adjust to it. And what I did see a little bit against the Vikings and a little bit more with Goddard and the Bucs was that when Jalen is able to roll out or just a little bit, the comeback routes, right? It's the A.J. Brown. He goes out and he seems to always come back, catch the ball, then move forward. It's almost like he loops around. Same with Goddard. He's very good at doing that too, like stop, come back for the ball, and then accelerate instead of hitting these guys in stride. And I think we saw a little bit more of that adjustment by Johnson in his play calling and the routes the guys were running to get Goddard and A.J. Brown a little bit more credit. So, 25 points, 22 points on offense because they had the 23 points on offense because of the safety, which brings us to the other side of the ball and the defense. And, John, we talked about how great Tampa Bay's run defense has been. You cannot run on this Eagles team. I don't see a team that's able to, establish a strong run game. They haven't played the better of the running backs yet. You'll hit those down the line. Tony Pollard comes to mind, and Dallas, who always seems to have a good game. But Stevenson from New England, he's not terrible. The guy from Minnesota stunk. That guy,
Madison.
And then Rashad White's, he's a step up from Madison, but he's not that much great. But you just can't run on these guys at all.
Is Zeke had a few runs in there, nothing crazy, but
yeah.
I think what'll ultimately probably hurt the I think the ability to catch the ball in the backfield I think will hurt, like a lot of screen game I think would hurt the Eagles more, just because I think the linebackers and the corners and the safeties I think are a concern, but yeah, you haven't seen. You're also talking about Ramondre Stevenson, Alexander Madison, and Rashad White. When we're talking Tony Pollard, Pacheco, Devin Achane, he's a rookie, but I'm talking, Breece Hall. I'm like
Mostert. Guys
that are a little bit more proven. Let's see if the rubber meets the road. But yeah, you can't look at the games now and be like, oh, you're going to run past Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. And then on the outside, you're going to, hope that Hassan Reddick hasn't sacked the quarterback or Josh Sweat, so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, we're talking it's week 4.
But you're also looking at a defensive tackle rotation that's got to be the best in the league. Like, right now, you look at, Cox has been playing extremely well. It's early in the season. I don't care. He's playing extremely well because they're able to limit him. And he comes, we're all like, oh, he's coming back 1 year, $10 million. We don't want, we're done with Cox. But not when you have him in this role. he can be dominant. Davis, Carter has been ungodly. The national media has talked about him, and rightfully so. He's got more hurries than Aaron Donald at this point, and less snaps. And then you got Davis, who's improved tremendously. He got in shape in the offseason. Then you have the guy who got the sack, Tyler Avoa or somebody, almost like Tua's name.
Yeah.
And then you got
Tualupo or Marlon.
Yeah, Tylupo and Milton Williams. We forgot about him. 3rd-round draft pick out of Louisiana Tech a couple years ago. He's playing well in those roles, and it's like that when you put all that pressure on the center and the guards, every freaking snap, it's tough. Mayfield was under a tremendous amount of pressure from the interior. He did escape a few times, which was to his credit, but it's pretty impressive. And Reddick, remember it was the same thing this time last year. He had no sacks, and then he dropped him back as a linebacker covering Justin Jefferson. Everyone wanted Gannon's head then, but by week 3, they went against Wentz and they had 8 sacks. I think he had 2.5 or a half, and then he just took off. So I'm not worried about Reddick at all.
Yeah. He had like that thumb injury too, like in the beginning of the season. So you don't know how, don't make injuries an excuse. But it's interesting looking back, playing Back to the Future a bit and seeing that Jalen Carter pick and how really successful that's been so far, knock on wood, replacing Javon Hargrave, who's a big piece of this defensive line. And everyone, including myself, was like, I'm all in for Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and you make the trade for DeAndre Swift, and you have that running back room, and you're like, man, that was a hell of a night. Heavy on defense, right? They went heavy on defense.
Yep.
So a testament to the front office. And again, testament to Jalen Carter, who, again, everyone kind of has a microscope on now for his past. And good for him. I hear Fletcher Cox is calling him every day, making sure that he's doing well and everything. Yeah. So, it's exciting to watch because, it's been a while since we've had a defensive line as dominant as this.
Yeah. Yeah. Since last year, really, we're at 70 sacks, right?
Yeah. Can we do better with the younger guys? They're cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. They're on rookie contracts. Yeah. Carter, it was I watched the post game for the first time, thanks to you guys for YouTube TV. First time I turned it on, watched the post game because all the games have been on locally, and I got the local game again this week with Washington. But watching Carter in the locker room, he looks like he's having fun. He doesn't look like the lights are too big. Maybe that's because he played so many important games down in Georgia. I heard his family was at the game, threw him a huge. Well, didn't throw him a huge tailgate, but they had a huge tailgate for Carter, and it's, his past is his past, and it seems like he's trying to be accountable for it, and that's what you want to see. So far so good with that. And Davis, man, do you see that when he sacked or knocked Cousins down with his belly? That was awesome. He blew through the offensive line, and he launched, and everyone's like, it should have been a launching thing. He didn't really launch. He went to sack him, but it just, the timing worked out. It was just the chest hit Cousins, and Cousins wasn't flying.
He is a big boy.
Yeah.
He makes Jalen Carter look like Muggsy Bogues.
Yeah, it's crazy how big and athletic that guy is. You bring up the secondary, and 2 names stand out to me is Job, who's starting on the outside because Avonte Maddox, who's our slot cornerback, who covers the slot, got injured, out for the year again. Not a surprise. Unfortunately, love Avonte, but they throw out I think Job is an undrafted rookie. He's the one out of LSU, Alabama. Is he the dude
Alabama?
LSU, Alabama?
Roll Tide.
Okay, but maybe Ringo, because one of the guys went to LSU, transferred to Alabama, or vice versa.
That's a great question.
Ringo or Job. Anyway, makes the team. Great to see, but a bit of a liability. Bradbury in the slot, he made up for it against Godwin, who's a very good, almost an excellent wide receiver. Tampa Bay is a great wide receiver core.
Josh Jobe played. He flipped his intent to Alabama. He initially committed to Miami, and then flipped his commit to Alabama.
Okay, so Ringo must be the guy who did both LSU, Alabama. Anyway, it's a bit of concern. I agree with you. There is where I'm going with that. I almost was ready to throw the towel in on Job last week, but
listen, again, it's early to be thrown in as the starting other corner, and Bradbury moved to the slot. Okay, you did okay, which is, I guess, all you want. Do I want perfect? But no, I don't want perfect. I mean, yes, I want perfect, but what I'm trying to say is the same concern that I think you have regarding the Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown situation is similarly to what I have with our cornerback position.
Okay.
It's that we decided to, in the offseason, make the move and bring back Darius Slay after cutting him.
Yeah.
Bradbury gets to talk to a bunch of people. He ends up coming back.
Yeah.
And we all, I'm not going to rehash what happened with him last year because it's a burning memory in my brain.
Yeah.
But, that inconsistency, bringing that inconsistency back scares me. And then having that question mark of like, same thing. Darius Slay goes down. You're going to put Josh Jobe on the outside? Okay. He played against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but I don't think he was covering Godwin or Evans. I think Slay was on Evans most of the time, and that's why Bradbury played in the slot. So he was probably on the third guy or the outside guy, depending on who it was.
Yeah.
But that's my concern. It's the depth there. And are you going to get a drop in play if Slay or Bradbury gets hurt? I mean, Avonte Maddox is hurt. He's done for the season, like you're saying. And Mario Goodrich is in there. Bradbury's in there. He's moving a position. So it'll be interesting to see, again, like when you start to play the Chiefs and the Bills, smarter quarterbacks, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're going to get a little different result. I don't know. Maybe people will start attacking that. Maybe, a team, will really lean more into the tight ends.
Yeah.
Take advantage of our linebackers not being able to cover possibly. But yeah, the corner situation, corner linebacker, and less safety now because of Blankenship.
Yeah.
I really like him.
Yeah.
I should give him a lot more credit than I do. That and seeing Sidney Brown come in and making that play with Mike Evans.
Two good
He's
plays.
a good one.
Yeah.
So my biggest concern on this team right now is still the defense based on the PTSD from last season and always having an issue going all the way back to Jim Schwartz. So
Yeah, I agree. And I think last year was the best linebacking core we have seen in Philly in a long time, led by T.J. Edwards, Kazir White, who had a phenomenal game for the Cardinals, and Jonathan Gannon out there in the desert against Dallas. Not to replace, and I was not high on Nakobe Dean just because he hadn't played. I think he was just way overhyped. Like, this guy, the kid's good. I'm like, he's injured. He's hurt. He's not playing. Gets hurt. Hurts his foot. Hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully sometime mid-October. I'm not really sure. They said it was a 4 week, so that would probably be mid-October. That being said, I thought the linebacking core played really well the other night against Tampa Bay. Made some nice plays. Got the safety. Under the Morrow, the guy who the Eagles called off the beach. He was sitting on the beach and called him back in along with now since retired Miles Jack.
He also was the guy who sprained Jalen's collarbone last year too, or shoulder.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
He was the guy that tackled him. He played for the Bears.
Okay.
He was their leading tackler, basically. We kind of flip-flopped leading tacklers. We're like, here, have T.J. Edwards, and we'll take your guy.
And I think the pro football rankings were just slightly in favor of T.J. Edwards there. And all the power to T.J. Edwards. He wants to go to that crap Bears team, but that was his childhood team growing up. Like, okay, you can do that. Obviously, he has the right to do that. And he was like the first free agent to sign last year was T.J. Edwards, at least the first one I saw on the ticker. Like, oh my God, he's going to really go to Chicago? Okay. But more power to you. The back seven is a concern. Blankenship's play so far has been really good. Not only is he good in the passing game, but he's a great tackler. He can come up. He's not afraid to get down there and tackle. And Sidney Brown, he made two great plays on that same drive. I don't know if you remember. One was like sort of a wide receiver screen that I think he blew through his blocker and then still tackled, I don't know if it was Evans or Godwin or one of those guys, and blew him up. I was like, my God, he came out of nowhere.
He flies around.
Yeah.
Man. You saw that in the preseason, though.
Yeah, but he wasn't getting the snaps, and people were like, oh, I'm ready for Sidney Brown. But, it takes time. He might be, and there might be him and Blankenship. And Edmonds has played well. The free agent safety coming over from Pittsburgh. He hasn't been called too much.
and Evans on special teams, and even he's been playing. I think it was the Vikings game. He had a really good game. Didn't he recover a fumble or something? Or I forget, but he had a really good last game. So again, when you have good players and they make plays, good things happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cliche, but that's what it is.
So No, you're right. So looking at the schedule, I'm not one to go, okay, win this, lose that, but looking at the layout of this schedule, and you bring up good points, I said the Eagles got the favorite in the first 4 games of the season and the last 4 games of the season. That middle 9, which is starting to not look as bad with the loss of Aaron Rodgers, but you bring up some good points. You got Mahomes in there. You have Josh Allen in there. You got Brock Purdy in there. He's going to destroy us. Brock Purdy, now that he's healthy, according to every single 49er fan and player out there. You got
Don't
Dallas.
write him off, dude. Don't write him off.
You got Dallas in there. It doesn't matter as bad as Dallas looks. Dallas is still Dallas. It's Dak Prescott has put together some great games against us in the past and played some really crappy games. So we're rounding out the end of this. Oh, and Dolphins. I think they're the team to beat in the AFC.
Josh Allen.
Yeah. We got Washington this week. They were a little bit exposed by Buffalo in Washington. And then we have Washington again at the end of October, but they're still part of that 9-game schedule. And don't forget, too, Washington did beat us last year in the Link on Sunday or Monday night.
Right. And again, who's their offensive coordinator? Eric Bieniemy.
Eric's sleeping with the Bieniemy, yes.
Well, I mean, he's got our number 2 from the Super Bowl. So,
This is true.
Pretty much almost the same team there, and the defense. Obviously, there's been some changes, but any given Sunday. Excuse me, I'm mumbling my words, but any given Sunday, especially with a guy who's seen you a lot.
Yeah,
we played them. Did we play them last year? Not in the Super Bowl. I think we did, didn't we?
Who?
Did we play the Chiefs twice?
No, just in the Super Bowl.
No, I thought we.
Jalen's first year, we played them, and that's when I knew we had something special with Jalen because our defense couldn't do crap, but Jalen battled that team back when the first year under Sirianni. Yeah,
I mean, listen, their defense, Washington's defensive line on paper is really good.
Yep.
I think it's one of their strengths.
Yeah.
Running back core,
yep.
Not bad, pretty good.
Yep.
Wide receivers good.
Very good.
Quarterback suspect.
Yeah, he's inexperienced.
So other than that, I'm not really overly concerned. But again, it's the Eagles. You never know.
Yeah.
This could be a trap game. This could be the Washington game from a couple years ago we watched on the deck that we were like,
yes.
How are they coming back 25 points down?
Hard to believe that was Carson Wentz, and that game was bad. That's when you knew it was kind of the beginning of the end for him. Tragically, I still want to see. I say it every podcast. They need to do a 30-30 on him. His time in Philly and his one season in Indianapolis. His time. Where did he go after that? Washington. Who cares? But
you hear he called the Jets, and the Jets kind of were like, "Nah, we're good."
I know.
We're gonna ride with Zach Wilson.
I knew Kaepernick did. I didn't realize Wentz did as well. Really?
Wentz and somebody else. Was it Matt Ryan?
Kaepernick. I think Ryan reached out. The Jets reached out to him. He said no.
Yeah.
But
that's another,
Yeah.
Again, they got a good defense too.
Who's the Jets GM?
Douglas.
Yeah.
Joe Douglas.
Who helped draft Carson Wentz? Joe Douglas. He knew to choose Zach Wilson over Carson Wentz just says something. Zach Wilson looks like, he does look like a child amongst men now. He just looks indecisive. They need to do something at that position because that team does have a ton of talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but Matt, Dolphins just put up a 70 burger. That's not easy in the NFL. It hasn't happened. I think 73 was the record, and he could have kicked a field goal to do it. He didn't. So, that's nothing to write home about. Tua's playing really well. They're loaded with weapons. Again, I'm not to reiterate, but what you said, but Cowboys always play us tough. Chiefs, Bills, and then the Niners. that middle of our schedule, that was under that was my second thing under concern was the schedule. Yeah. Is that coming back into another season, coming off a Super Bowl loss, You had a heck of a regular season run last year. You got the first round bye, which everyone wants.
Right.
Can you do that going in this middle of the schedule and come out fairly unscathed to where you are above the 49ers, you know what I mean, are above, the Seahawks or whoever is going to be that other team that, if it is the Cowboys, you know what I mean, and you play them twice. So
yeah, it's a good point. Bringing up the NFC, we talked about it last year on the podcast a lot. The exodus of talent from the NFC to the AFC, and we see it this year even with unfortunately the injury to Aaron Rodgers. He still left Green Bay. This NFC, I mean, just the 49ers and the Eagles just seem to be leagues above the rest of the conference. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think that number one part of that is the quarterback.
Yep.
Right? I mean, everyone can say what they want to say about Brock Purdy, but the guy wins. Yeah, I mean, that same thing with Jalen. The same stats that everyone's saying about Jalen, how he's 22-3, whatever, since whatever. Mm-hmm. Brock Purdy hasn't lost. I don't think has lost a game.
Nope. The only game he's lost as a starter is against the Eagles, and you can't really count that.
And he got hurt. So, I don't take him lightly. I mean, he's got something going on. So
they chose him over Trey Lance, the guy they sold all the mortgage, the draft pick for, traded him to Dallas for the last draft pick in the league, the Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah. So I mean, they punted on him for a reason. They're riding with him. Jimmy G goes, so there's no more distractions there. Yep. You got Sam Darnold there. I mean, okay, great. But again, defense, right? Very good defense. Nick Bosa, Hargraves, obviously. I'm missing a few guys off the top of my. Fred Warner, really solid defense. And then again, the playmakers on offense. Geez, it's like a dream team. McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk. Kittle. So you got a lot of weapons there.
Yeah.
And it's just that third team who I think we're kind of like waiting to see who it's going to be. Is it going to be the Cowboys? Is it going to be Seattle? Is it going to be, a Jordan Love in Green Bay? Yep. It's going to be somebody. But you just have to make sure that you take care of business in the meat of that schedule. So you're not really beholden to that. The Vikings were a little bit of a surprise too. That would be the other team that I was like 0-3. Man, Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of talk about him being traded to the Jets. He's got Justin Jefferson. He's got Jordan Addison. They just traded for Cam Akers. They got Hawkinson. You ever
look at the career comparison of the numbers of Cousins and Dak Prescott? They're similar. They're the only thing difference is the skin tone, really, with their stats wise, and they can't win in the playoffs. Cousins doesn't get hurt as much as Dak, but they both have pretty decent talent around them. They're very similarly built teams. It's kind of interesting to see. Going to your point about who is going to be that third team, Detroit could be, but then Seattle took them out in a fun game. Jared Goff's looking good, surprisingly good, and happy for Jared Goff. As we know, he's tied to Carson Wentz in some ways. And then Geno Smith resurrecting his career with Seattle. There are good stories to have, but again, they're just that little step below. One team that I wanted to delve into a little bit, surprisingly, they're supposed to be better, is the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. They look awful.
Yeah. I mean, Saquon's banged up. Their wide receivers are suspect, right?
Yeah.
Remember when they had Galladay, Sterling Shepard, and I don't think Odell was gone by then, but they had three really good wide receivers.
And they had the tight end.
And you were like,
Ingram, who's with Jacksonville.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, they got weapons, and then they pay Danny Dimes, and you're like, is Dable good? You don't know anymore. Right. Thibodeau, you don't hear anything about that. I don't know if he's hurt. They got who was the Jet defensive lineman they got?
Williams that they signed.
Was it Quinn Williams?
Leonard Williams.
Leonard Williams. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, a very big surprise there. Waller getting traded, coming over there. You thought, okay, that's a tight end that the Eagles are going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's doing okay. You know what I mean? But not superstar level that you could have had Ingram, but you have Waller now, so it's a wash.
Yeah, and go into the Giants, I'm looking more at that defense. If you remember, the Eagles destroyed that defense in the playoffs. And I know, yeah, it's a different season. They go out against Dallas, get beat 40-0. That defense was exposed. Arizona had a 28 points on them with Josh Dobbs in his second start for the Cardinals. And then the 49ers, yeah, they're a good offensive team, putting 30 points up. Like, if you're the Giants, and their background is similar to us, their fans would rather win games, they're 17-6 or, 10-7 rather than getting, 31-28. And Dable did differently what Nick Sirianni did, although Gannon kind of interfered. He hired an experienced defensive coordinator coming from Baltimore and Wink Martindale, who ran those Baltimore defenses. And it's like, what is going on up there? And the offensive line. Like, it's like the Phillies bullpen. It's like every year it's the offensive line. Like, how are they not developing? They drafted that guy, Thibodeau, you brought up, right? They drafted Evan Neal, who was supposed to be,
Alabama,
at the one point was supposed to be the number one overall pick. He looks like a turnstile. Now, is that bad talent evaluation when the rest of the league thinks he's going to be a number one pick? Could be. But they're not developing anyone. Like, you got to start looking at the coach, the offensive line coach there. And, there's got to be a lot of, like, this guy was coach of the year last year, Dable. Everyone wants him to do well, but, they're getting destroyed.
Kafka calls the plays, right? Kafka's the OC.
Then there was rumors I heard that against the Cardinals, Dable took over the play call, and if you remember, they ran it all the way back. I give Daniel Jones a lot of credit for that game. He put that team on his back in the second half, but he didn't look that good against San Francisco. Now, no one does with a bad offensive line and no Saquon Barkley. No one's going to look great, but I mean, the Giants are supposed to be taking that next step. They look worse than Washington right now, and not that Washington's bad, but they're not. Name a player on Washington besides Chase Young. They don't have a face of the franchise kind of guy where New York does. Saquon, Daniel Jones, whatever you want to say about that. My point being is that they look awful.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Just the way they've been getting slapped around a little bit there, and I think you got to really look at, the two things you bring up is the talent and the coaching, and how do you go from last year being a playoff team to this year not being a playoff. Well, it's early, but not looking like a playoff team, and having sort of almost similar. I mean, they really didn't. I don't remember them losing. I think they gained more talent than they lost. Between the draft and free agency and signing players. I mean, remember the Saquon thing he was going to sit out. You know what I mean? So, imagine if he would have sat out, maybe this would have been even worse. But hey, when the Giants are not doing good and Dallas isn't doing good, I'm happy. So,
absolutely. The Giants and Dallas. And then what'd you think of that Dallas loss? I mean, they went into Arizona and Jonathan Gannon slapped that team around on defense.
I always say Dallas is being Dallas. They always got that one. And listen, Trayvon Diggs being hurts them. They have Gilmore on the other side, so they had like two really good corners. I would say that'd be comparable almost to the talent on paper to what we have. But again, weapons, Cooks, Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, and then Dak. And they got. Who's the tight end they have? I forget. It's not Schultz. Is it Schultz?
Schultz left, went to the Texans, so I'm not sure who they. I think they drafted
Ferguson. There was that Ferguson kid that would look really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you get slapped around by the Cardinals, and again, like you're going to play the Cardinals this year. Go back to the Eagles. Like, does Jonathan Gannon have your number? It's late in the season. Like, are you going to need those wins? Like, and listen, the other thing that we're not talking about here is that the entire NFL is on notice for Caleb Williams. So there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be, I hate to use the word, tanking for Caleb this season. So the teams like Arizona who you think are shoe-ins, there's going to be other teams in that stratosphere, the Commanders, that are going to vie for that spot. So, it makes you wonder, not that they're going to go out and trash games, but this quarterback coming out, it could potentially be one of those Jalen Hurts, Mahomes type guys, because he's had such a good college career. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Tanking in the NFL, to me, it's harder to do because I think it's just the nature of the sport is just so adrenaline rush on every single play. It's like in basketball. Okay, they slow it down, they bring it up the court. You can don't. Every play is like boom, 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 boom. It's hard to get guys into that mental position. And the Cardinals look like they're tanking. They traded for Josh Dobbs. Murray looks like he's pretty much gone. They hire a coach who looks like a wing nut, who's just a space cadet. He's the next coming of Adam Gase, in my opinion. Yeah, what was that? Like, if you're the owner, like, what? Maybe they're like, this is exactly what we want. Maybe the owner's like that. And the Bidwells were up there with Irsay and Snyder. They can't get out of their own way. You just don't hear about them anymore. Or as much as you hear about Irsay and thankfully thankfully for Washington fans, Daniel Snyder's gone. I do want to segue into that Commanders, though, because you are a football, basketball guy. What is your opinion of Josh Harris owning the Philadelphia 76ers, owning the Washington Commanders now, his hometown team? Grew up rooting for them, but not very beloved or liked in Philadelphia for reasons I'm not really sure why, but as a more of a Sixers fan than I am, do you think it's a mistake, or it's going to be impact the Sixers?
Yes, I think it's a mistake. I think it's very short-sighted. Pardon me, by a guy who owns a sport franchise in Philadelphia and knows how Philadelphia is. On top of just the Sixers team itself, the whole issue with the stadium is another thing that is rubbing people the wrong way. I think from the very instance of him taking over and tanking and doing what he did, it made them look like a laughingstock, and I think he is a laughingstock. I think the more stuff that goes on between Colangelo, I'm reliving the past here to sort of build up to what happened, but the Colangelo, the tanking, it starts with the tanking,
right.
Starts with Colangelo, the burners, and all that shit.
Yeah.
Drafting Markelle Fultz, the guy not being able to shoot, drafting Ben Simmons, him being a colossal failure,
wow.
And now basically going all in for James Harden, who I'm at failure too, because I thought James Harden was going to be a better player. Going all in for that superstar, and now it's like basically James Harden doesn't even have a relationship with the GM anymore. The entire his resume as the Philadelphia 76ers owner has been a failure, in my opinion. Okay. And him going and buying a football franchise, which, again, I also say short-sighted because it's in the same conference as the team that you play across the street in the city that you own, I think is really, really short-sighted. I'm going to keep using that word because I don't have another word right now. And I think it's, when you start to bring Joel Embiid to the Commanders games, it's a bad look.
Yeah.
And you grew up in Philadelphia. I'm a diehard Eagles fan. Yeah. I can't understand why someone would be like, you know what? Philly fans are the way they are. I'm going to buy the Commanders. And I'm going to have to, watch a game at Wachovia Center and look across the street at the Link and think like, I hope that place burns down. You know what I mean? Because it only helps me if that happens. I'm figuratively, but you can't go to the sidelines anymore. You know what I mean? Not that that's a big thing, but listen, at the end of the day, Josh Harris is a businessman.
Yeah.
I respect it. He turned the Sixers. He bought the Sixers cheap. He could sell the Sixers tomorrow and probably quadruple his money. Yeah. Congratulations. He bought the Commanders for like $5 billion with a bunch of other investors. In 30 years from now, when he's 80 or however old he's going to be, will he be able to double his money? Maybe. But running a franchise, I mean, you've seen it with the Sixers. I mean, is there any sort of resume there that you're like, yep, sign me up for that guy? Like, I'd rather have Mark Cuban. You know what I mean? At least he built something and won a championship, and Josh Harris hasn't sniffed that. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, but I'm sorry I went on a diatribe about it, but it really bothers me and irks me because I said it from the beginning. I'm on record talking about this, that if when he started to talk about, or the news came out that he was thinking about it, I was like, it's a bad idea. It's a bad look. And he did it. So piss on him.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up good point. You bring up great points there. Being rivals. But one team you forgot that he also bought before the Commanders were the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah,
Big Flyers' main rival. And
absolutely.
the Flyers have been worse than the Sixers have been. The Sixers have had some sort of success, not a lot, and very unachieving success, but it's been success. They've at least gotten to the playoffs and had some and developed some players. In the Colangelo situation, I'll push back because the NBA forced the Colangelos on him. I don't think that was his choice to hire the Colangelos to step in from the tanking.
Again, what does that tell you if you were being forced to do something?
But his strategy to tank or hiring someone whose strategy is to tank was not wrong. And Josh Harris, before he became not an investor, but a hedge fund guy, his thing was that he bought a bunch of houses, tore them down, and built them back up and sold them. Exactly what he did with the Sixers. Tore them down, made them tank, built them back up, didn't sell them, but used it to buy the Devils. The Devils have more success now than the Sixers and the Flyers. They're about the Sixers thing, where they're really bad. It's just the Devils have been able to draft players better and develop them. It tells me that Harris will get out of the way of the personnel and let them do their own thing. And he probably learned from Sam Hinkie. So if he's able to put the right people here in Washington, that could be a good thing for Washington fans. It's got to be better than Daniel Snyder. But it is a bit of a slap in the face to Sixers-Eagles fans. Yeah, absolutely. I could see it that way. And who knows? Who knows down the... I'm not defending him, but his track record isn't that as bad as we think it is. He's just a businessman. He doesn't have much of a personality. He was a very awkward handshake with Troy Aikman. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah. That was clearly awkward. His social skills are down, but not every rich person has great social skills, as we know.
I just think that one thing, Matt, I just think that when you talk about success in sports and owning a sports franchise, the number one thing that comes to mind is winning,
of course,
and championships.
Of course.
And when I think of Josh Harris, I don't think of that. I think of a guy who, and listen, we can argue on another podcast or go in depth about tanking and whether it's good or bad. Generally speaking, the track record isn't good.
No.
Whether Sam Hinkie and he went along with it with Sam Hinkie or whatnot, they became the laughing stock. I mean, people were buying rows of seats for $1.
Right.
Right. And I understand the businessman, and that's what I'm saying. Like from a business standpoint, congratulations, hat tip, respect. But from a short-sighted sports team owner in Philadelphia, and thank you for bringing up the Devils because I even forgot about that. Like for him. I don't know if he could ever get the Flyers out of the grasp of Comcast, but why not buy the Flyers? Because if you bought the Flyers, you'd have the same building the Flyers and the Sixers play.
Yep.
But maybe there's obviously he's a businessman, so he wants his own
Comcast
stadium.
Isn't selling the Flyers. That's the problem with them. They've done the right thing and changed a lot of the executive boards. Hopefully in the right direction. Now it's similar strategy. Let's hire some old time Flyers and put them in these big time roles, and let's see how they can do. They might be better for the community. Daniel Briere's got a clean slate, but
it comes always down to ownership too. It's the guy. It starts at the top.
Yep.
Jeffrey Lurie, for as much shit as everyone gave him, he created a culture and a place where people want to play.
Yep.
And it doesn't hurt that you have the best fans in the world that spend a ton of money. And so on. We all know about that stuff.
Yep.
The problem with the Sixers, though, is you basically bought a team and said we're going to suck for 5 years.
Yeah.
Suck it up, fans, and then don't worry about it. It's going to be worth the wait. And then when the wait comes around and you're like, oh, I'm ready for the playoffs, you're out in the first round. You're out in the second round, and you're having problems with coaches. You're having problems with players. It's like I sat around for this.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, they haven't delivered on that. Yeah, absolutely. That is the main problem because you can never tell a fan base to accept losing. I don't care if you're Philadelphia or wherever. You just can't do that and not deliver on that because you're putting the wrong people hiring the personnel in place. Anyway, let's get off of I just want to pick your brain about that because I think if you're a Washington fan, if you're a Washington fan, it's got to be better than what you had with Daniel Snyder. So that's the other thing. Back to the NFL. We're going to do a couple more minutes here. Easily, what team has impressed you the most outside of the Miami Dolphins?
Oh, outside of the Miami Dolphins?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Oh, you stumped me on that, Matt. Outside the Dolphins, really good. I'm going to say Packers, Jordan Love. Jordan Love and the Packers. Amazing to be able to Aaron Rodgers to leave, Jordan Love to step in there and have the success he's having. I think it's great for the Packers, the Packers fans, to deal with Aaron Rodgers over and over again, who some people hate and despise, but he's playing well. Good group of receivers there. And I think that's part of the beauty of the Packers. It seems like I don't know how they do it. They always draft these tremendously talented quarterbacks, let them take a back seat for 3 years, and the next thing you know, they're Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that Jordan Love's going to be that yet, but I mean, he's looking promising. I would say him. I would say the Packers right now, probably.
Yeah. The podcast I did on the season debut that I did solo. Sorry, John. I said there's a couple players in the NFL that could really change the perplexion of the season. Jordan Love was one of them. You know, if he could come in, and they got some players in Green Bay, both on the offensive side, defensive side. The talent level is down. Aaron Rodgers is out. Like you said, it gets to be his team there. I said that Russ Wilson could be another player that could, if he is the player that, is he shot or is he just had the wrong coach there? And I guess I put Aaron Rodgers at that point, which is mute at this point, unfortunately, for the Jets and the Jets fans. I have a really good buddy of mine who's going through a really rough time the last couple of years, and he's a Jets and a Mets fan. And I kept thinking, like, heading into the baseball season, Mets were favored, and they went to the tank. Jets get Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, my summer is saved. First game, done. Like, oh, man, he's having a really, really rough time.
Well, is he a Knicks fan? Because, I mean, they're looking up.
He grew up. He was born in Brooklyn, then moved to San Antonio, so he's been a Spurs fan, and
he's got that to look forward to until Victor Wembanyama blows his knee out.
Exactly. And
he's got no luck with Brooklyn. I mean, forget that. I mean,
no. Yeah. John, it's been a great show getting you on here. Just wanted to touch base. Awesome to see you again. And give me, what do you think the Eagles are going to do this week? They're an 8-point favorite right now.
8-point favorite. Let's say the Eagles go off here. Let's go like 38-10.
38-10. Love it. Love the positivity.
38-10. 2 touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 running touchdown for Jalen Hurts.
Nice.
And maybe a couple rushes, maybe a defensive interception. I don't know. We'll see.
Nice. Awesome, man. All right, I'm going to play a little music, and then we'll sign off after that. The little Suicide Squad, the Purple Lamborghini.
Purple Lamborghini lurking. Ain't no mercy, ain't no mercy. Purple Lamborghini lurking. Rose.
Oh, yeah, it's been the Matt Kwasiborski Show, calling you live and direct from Arlington, Virginia, with a great friend of mine, Jonathan Mathers. Any last final thoughts, John?
Go Birds, baby.
All right. And remember to inspire the inspiration. Don't wait for the inspiration to inspire you. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Take it easy.